Yay! Hi, everybody.
Robert Yacco.
Oh, yes, Robert Yacco, that picture. I love it.
Leslie Stevens.
Love it, love it. Oh, we have like a little mini parade reunion. I love it. Good to see everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I know that there are people that are going to be joining us later, but I don't want to waste a minute. I want to dive in with one of my favorite people in the world. I'm going to introduce him in a second, but I'm just going to go. I'm going to go for it. So this guy has done 1,000,001 things. So I'm only going to give you a smattering of what this amazing man has done, and we are honored to have this artist on today. On Broadway, you know him from the original companies of Once on This Island and Parade, as well as one of the many incredible people that went into the Broadway company of Rent, national tours of The Lion King, Color Purple, Miss Saigon, international company of Porgy and Bess. Please welcome the incredible Rufus Bonds Jr. Woo!
Thank you very much.
Okay, now I need to unspotlight myself. There he is. Hey-o. All right. Anyway, so Rufus, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
I am so excited to see your face. You and I have been keeping in touch we always keep in touch because you're like a mentor of mine, and I am always asking you questions, especially as a father. I look up to you so much, and so I cherish our relationship. But I want to talk about how we met. We were auditioning the very first time we did Parade back in 2013, and we just were not finding. We had some great people come in, but when I obsessed over the cast recording of Parade for I can't tell you how long. And specifically this man's voice and this man's interpretation of this role. And nothing was, when you're going to cast a show that has an iconic performance in it, you want someone to either completely do their own thing, and to the point where you're not even you're so wrapped up in what they're doing, you're not thinking about who's come before them, or you want them to be as close to that as possible. And neither of those things were really coming through our door. And anyway, we got into conversation with a mutual friend, Ron, who is Rufus's son's godfather. And he was like, you know what? You should just ask Rufus. And I was like, yeah, right. And I was like, he's like, no. He's like, you should just, he lives in California. You should ask him. And I was like, well, you know what? I've never been a person to not shoot for the stars. And so I was like, why not? I mean, the worst he's going to say is no. And I called him up, and Rufus, it was the most amazing conversation. We really talked about the show, and he asked me one question, and he was like, it was essentially basically like, how do you portray who did it? Who is the guilty party in the show? And I answered in saying that I think it's important that the audience is left not knowing, because we don't know. It was never proven who did it or didn't do it. And the show is written with a bias, for sure, but we were definitely careful in the way that was all portrayed. And Rufus was thumbs up, as he just did in his camera. He was like, I'm in. And I was like, I could not believe that I was gonna get to not only meet, but get to direct this legend in my head. And so I just remember memory real quick. First rehearsal, we had had a week of rehearsal with the non-union actors, and some of the equity ensemble and featured parts and dance captain and all that. And our first sing through was like Rufus's first day of rehearsal, and also Robert's first day of rehearsal. I remember, I think Leslie, you were with us the week prior, right? I think, yeah. And so I just remember we get to the courtroom, and you could see everybody. He was standing behind everyone, but I got to watch everyone's faces, and you could just see everybody adjusting their seats and freaking out that the voice on the recording was right behind them, and that they were going to be doing this show with them. It was just pure magic. So Anyway, that's how we met, and we have been fast friends and have such a mutual respect for each other. And he's directed for us a couple of times, and he's now launching himself into a completely different part of the business, which we'll get to later. Because I'm going to go chronological order now, because that's just how my OCD needs to do that. So let's go back to we're gonna go back to college for a second. You went to the University of Cincinnati, and you got your BS in chemistry. Please explain.
So I was in Cincinnati, and I went there. That's interesting because even in high school, I had professors apply to colleges for me, trying to get me to go into music. And I'm like, oh, no, no, no. The voice is only for God. You just sing for God. That's all you do. All that other secular stuff will take me right to hell. And so I loved chemistry in college, in high school. So I decided to go into chemistry in college. And I went to chemical technology first, which was an associate degree. Then after that, I said, well, let me go in and finish. And then as I was doing it, I realized, I don't know what I really want to do with this. And I had a friend who was still a very good friend of mine, Donald Lawrence, who is very great in the gospel industry and the music industry, period. And he was at CCM. He said, you hate chemistry. And I was working at that time for Sherwin-Williams. He said, I'll teach you 2 songs. You will get into the conservatory, just audition. I'm like, okay. And so he taught me 2 songs I had never performed before in my life. This was all new to me. And I was 26, I think, at that time. And so he taught me Mean Old Lion and Old Man River.
Oh my God.
And so I sang those 2 songs. And then Worth Gardner was the department head at that time. He said, why don't you go to New York? I said, I don't know anything. And he said, okay. And so I got accepted into the program. They accepted 16 people at that time, as they probably do now. And I went to work, and I let them know that I was going to CCM. I'd been accepted to the program, and that I would be quitting. And I did. And I quit, and I went back to the university, started in musical theater, and I had no experience. And that's why I always teach students and everybody, it's so important to watch. You learn so much by just watching, because I could not compete because I had not had any experience. And all of those students have been doing this since they were children, and they were great. And so I watched and I learned. And then one professor, James Truitt, who was with Ailey, he was one of our teachers. He said, you need to go to New York and study this summer, or with Nat Horn and study dance. I'm like, okay. And so I had no money. I told my mom and dad I was going to New York for the summer. And they said, how? I said, I don't know, but I'm going. And as things would happen, things fell into place. There was this director I knew who was leaving for the summer. He gave me his brownstone. I didn't eat. I was down to 150 pounds. Woo! But it was like taking 5 dance classes a day at Nat Horn's, and it changed my life.
Wow.
And then when I went back to school, they took my scholarships away. So I went back to New York.
Wow. And then the rest is history. I mean, you, that's incredible. And also is like, you obviously were just born to do it and came in late to it because your instincts. Also, though, I feel sometimes there are people with such incredible natural instincts that training can sometimes get in the way, because a lot of educators just like to, put their input in sometimes when it's not necessary. I remember like when we did parade, I was like, yeah, I'm not just gonna direct you just to say that I could direct you. I'm like, you're good. There was like two things I think that I was like, hey, what about? And you were like, yeah, great. But otherwise, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna just mess with it just to mess with it. And I think a lot of educators do that. And I think that you escaped that in a way, and that you were able to really trust your own beautiful, incredible instincts that make you such the raw performer that you are. You're just incredible to watch. So how long after that was it that you booked? It was in 1990, I think, that Once on This Island was your first Broadway show, correct?
It was, but when I was in college, we had a gospel group, and Worth Gardner actually heard us and wanted to do something with us. So we created a show that went to the Cincinnati Playhouse that also went to off-Broadway.
Oh, wow.
And so that was the first thing I had done in New York.
Oh, amazing.
And then once, no, then the first thing I did was Abyssinia. That was the first show I auditioned for in New York, which let me know that I would be fine.
Oh, that's cool.
Because it was the first thing that I had done on my own and gotten cast in. And I'm like, I'm good. And I tell everybody that once you do that first thing and you know what you're doing and you're still learning and growing, it's okay. But that should let you know you have the tools to be successful in the business.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and I believe that.
Absolutely. It takes the first person to take the quote unquote like risk on you to give you your first opportunity. So many people are like, you can't get the job without the credit. It's like so hard, you know, and it's like, that's not true. It's like, it does happen, and
Yes.
everyone has to have their first thing. So,
and there's no reason to pad your resume.
yes.
Your talent speak for you. Because
Okay.
my resume was blank and I didn't care. Because I'm like, okay, what do you want me to do? This is what I have. Either this is what you need right now or not. Either I'm ready right now or I'm not, but I will be.
Right. Oh, amazing. So when you booked Once on This Island, tell a little bit about like what your position was within the company, what you did, what that experience was like for you as like your first Broadway show, especially as like for someone who, I know a friend of mine, their first Broadway show was the tour of Les Mis, and she was like 17. She booked Eponine. She didn't know anything about Actors Equity. She didn't know about rules. She got fired so fast because she kept getting, written up like, you're late to half hour, you're late to, or whatever. And she's like, but I don't go on for like an hour. And it's like, yeah, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
The fortunate thing is when I was at CCM, they taught you all the rules.
Nice.
And also by doing a show at Cincinnati Playhouse, I came to New York with my equity card.
Amazing.
So I had that. And then when I was casting Once on This Island, I was already doing Romance in Hard Time at the Public.
Okay.
And so I had actually gotten cast in both at the same time, and I had to choose.
Wow.
And I chose Romance in Hard Times because it was slated to go to Broadway.
Right.
And it did not. So I went on tour with Joseph, I think, something. And then when I came back, I had a call on my phone and I played Once on This Island every day that I was on the road. I listened to it every day. And the moment I got home, I had a message on my machine, at that time, answering machine, that I had an audition for Once on This Island. So I went in, and Graciela Danielle was there, and there were two more of the stage managers there, somebody else. She said, you're the only one I called in because I've always wanted you for the show.
Wow.
And I did the songs, and then I was cast in the show. And it was for a vacation swing. So I had to learn all the roles.
That had to be like insane for your brain, like having.
It was, and I will never, ever do it again, because the only time I was relaxed was when the curtain came down and I went home. When I got up in that morning, I was a nervous wreck again.
Who am I going to be today? Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, this is too much.
Especially in a show like that where it's like a small core group of principals where there's no one to like hide behind. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, you have to know, like it's like going on and like Come From Away or something. Like you got to know every. Yeah.
And it was during the day where you sat in the audience and you wrote down your blocking. And you figured it out on your own. Yeah. And then you went in. Of course, they rehearsed you, but you need to know your stuff before you get there.
Right.
Not about them just teaching you.
Right. That's got it. Like the pressure would be so intense.
Yeah. But it was an amazing experience.
That's awesome.
It was.
So was your next then Broadway show? You went into Rent then, or was it?
Yes.
And then shortly after Rent was then Parade, correct?
Yes.
I know you were part of the Rent family for a while, right? Because you also didn't you also tour with them?
I did. Yeah. I was in Toronto doing Joseph, and then I got a call to audition for Rent. Is that true? I don't remember. But I auditioned for Rent, and it was for the tour. No, I was home. No, yes. So I auditioned, and then I did the tour. And then after the tour, I came to LA. And then I remember they wanted me to come and audition again for the Broadway company after I had done the tour. And I said no. And so I'm like, I said, I'm not auditioning for this again and not getting it.
Good for you.
Because then I'll be very angry and that would be my fault.
Yeah.
So Michael Greif said, what if I come to you? I'm like, okay. So they came to LA and I auditioned and then I got the Broadway show.
Wow. Yeah, that was back in the day where they used the tours to be like the feeders for the Broadway company. Like they would do that a lot where they would try you out on the road and then they would move you to Broadway.
Yeah.
So the role you played, Tom Collins, he is in my opinion the best material in the show. I mean, what a beautiful role. And specifically, obviously, like the reprise is just like, oh my God, I wish I had gotten to see you do that because it would have just ripped me in pieces. But was that a powerful experience being a part of that show? Like, do you have any?
Extremely powerful for many reasons. I had lost friends to the disease. And so I remember the very first put-in rehearsal that I had. And I thank them so much for their understanding. We got to the reprise. We got to the reprise, and I couldn't sing a note. They played the entire song. I couldn't sing a thing. Wow. And then we went on to the next moment.
Wow.
And when we did the show, of course, it was all there.
Right.
You know, it was the first time really facing all of that in the rehearsal. And it was just too much at the moment. But the cast was amazing. And what was wonderful about that show as well, in terms of vocally, I was able to sing from every capacity and fiber of my voice. Wow. You know, and I could sing from all the depths of my spirit and my soul and my body and my being, you know, and everything that I felt up to that point in my life, I could express, you know, through the whole arc of the piece and through the beauty of expressing what love is and what love looks like and how we should not just love, but just love. That's amazing. That is who I am, you know, so to be able to do that on the stage night after night after night was great.
I think we all should be so lucky to have, like, I had that moment for me where you connect with a part in whatever way so deeply, it just changes you and also like where you are at in life, and there's a lot of circumstances that surround it, but they just really change you as a performer for forever. It's such a gift, like what we get to do. So that's amazing. So let's talk about Parade. So you get to be a part of a pretty, it became, of course, it didn't have the run on Broadway that it should have had. It you know, and you get to do it at Lincoln Center of all epic places. I had the pleasure of seeing The King and I there, and it was my first time seeing some at Lincoln Center, and you don't realize how it's like a football field and then a football field off stage in every direction. Right. It is the most intense place I've ever seen, space I've seen art created. It was pretty amazing. So you were a part of obviously an incredible company with legends on the team, with, you know, a young, not yet legend, but Jason Robert Brown, and obviously has become a staple in our community, as well as then, of course, a current legend, Hal Prince. What was that experience like in creating that show? And then more specifically, having directed the show twice, it's always been fascinating. You and I have had conversations about this, and so I somewhat know the answer, but want to share it with the room. The Black experience in that show. It's a show, of course, about a Jewish man and the rise of the KKK and all of that. It's a very, very intense show. You can imagine why the tourists didn't want to go see it, but an important show with an important message. But the creatives, because of there was a very small number of Black members in the original company, and there was a song that was created to basically kind of encapsulate the Black experience in a moment, which I feel is, well, I don't want to say how I feel yet. I just want you to talk about, like, your experience in that show and what it was like, maybe the good, the bad, the indifferent, and what your thoughts are.
Sure. the 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 power of the show resonated from the first day of rehearsal.
Hmm.
Number one, you had an amazing cast, and you also had a cast of principals who were adults who had families. So therefore, the work was about the work. It was about doing the work, which is different than on tour where you have to create a life outside of that. So it was totally about the piece, which was great. In my journey through the piece, it was also finding about what was happening in my community, because it is always important, no matter what you're doing, no matter what show you're doing, you have to find out who you are in the piece and how your culture exists in the piece, no matter what it is. And so I began to do research and study up on Jim Conley and find out what was going on, what was said, what did he say, what was written about him, what was happening in the community. And there were things that I was finding that were not. And I would go to Alfred Urey and say, now this is happening. Can you help me understand? He said, well, I don't really know anything about that, because they did not investigate the Black community at all, because that wasn't the story they were telling. And so it was up to me to interpret all of that and to bring that life and history to the piece as well. And then also to figure out in my mind what I felt about him, and if I felt he had actually done this or not, And in my mind, I had to choose that he did not. And I also had to choose that he did not because he wasn't convicted. Because I could not convict someone who was not convicted. I, Rufus, could not do that. And as we went through the journey of the show, there were some things that I was asked to do. And then when they found out that I was going to question that, they realized, well, let's not do that. Because at one more point, Hal wanted me to follow Mary Fagan off at the very beginning of the show. And if I follow her off, then I killed her.
100%.
That's a clear story on that. I'm like, I can't do that,
And I think it's so much more unsettling when you're like, when the audience is not left with a definitive answer.
I agree.
That's what happened. That's what it is. You know what I mean? And you can have your opinion either way. I mean, there's so much research that has been done since they reopened the case, since your production was created with so much additional information. And so regardless of opinions, you're totally right. The man was not convicted. No one, and it's so important to...
even if you're looking historically, what Black man is going to rape a little white girl and live in Georgia?
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
Right.
That's not going to happen today.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, did you feel when that show was being created that because the show was written with obviously a clear bias in it, that the Black cast members, mainly specifically yourself, I mean, obviously there was a few others that had a part to play within the piece, but obviously you're being thought as the antagonist in the show. So how are you, as you said, you had to kind of navigate that yourself. Did it feel like you guys were there to be there, and that it wasn't like, because it was hard for me to, in directing the show the second time, it was such a gift because then I got to really dive into as much as the piece would allow without rewriting the show, creating a little bit more of the Black experience within that world, within the confines of the show. But that had to feel very kind of almost isolating and whatnot when you're not really being met with, you're being met with, I don't know. Like,
it was, I won't say it was isolating because I always have to do the work. We all always have to do the work because we're the ones left to tell that part of the story. So once I understand what the situation is, I move forward because there's no need to sit in it. I'll continue to ask questions. To see if I can get answers.
Yeah.
but I also have to find the answers for myself, and I know that. And the beauty of the other African Americans in the cast were they're very dignified people.
Mhm.
So therefore, those roles were played as dignified people,
Right. Right.
which makes a very difference.
They weren't portraying stereotypes or
Exactly.
yeah, correct.
Exactly.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, that's really important. And
Mhm.
what in when that song was that song originally in the show? The song the quartet between.
Bumping and rolling.
Yes. Sorry.
Yes,
Yes.
it was.
It
Yes,
was okay.
yes. What was not in the show was Minnie.
Right. She came in the and she was never in the show, correct? It wasn't like
That
she
is
was cut.
correct.
Okay.
But she was in the information that I had found
Right.
because they had also cut her face and they
Right.
had also tried to kill her husband
Right.
because he was going to say what they were saying was not valid or true.
Right. Right. So yeah, I was so one of the I'm very very mixed on the revival of that show, but that was one the main change that they made that I was a big fan of, and was thrilled that they added that character into the show. Very very important. Okay, so you get to do on the road. I mean, you did a million things, but talking about you did Saigon and Lion King, and I got to see you in the Lion King, and it's just in LA. That show, I cry like every time I see it. It's so beautiful. But what was your Lion King experience like? I've heard so many different things from different people, and obviously everyone has a different experience. But I remember you had some interesting experiences on that show. So just
Sure.
yeah, what was your experience on Lion King?
Sure. The one thing is I had just had my son when I got Lion King. So he was just born, and that's a whole shift that happens in a person when you have a child.
Huge.
But you
Yeah.
can act like you're singing to a baby, but when you have one, it's a whole different world.
Boom.
So that was really, really great. The thing that challenged me in the piece and in the work, which goes along with where we sit today, is when you don't see a people, then what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
What are you directing? Who are you asking them to be? Because I felt like when I was there, Africa was never mentioned.
Whoa. In
Never,
any rehearsal or anything.
never, ever mentioned through my experience. I think that may
Well,
have
and part of what I wanted to even touch on too is exactly where you're going, but it's Disney is very corporate theater. Like it's a totally different, I would imagine, different experience than doing something like Parade or Once on This Island.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And when I was going through it, there were some things that were happening that were not adding up for me. And the producers realized that, so they would come to my dressing room just to check on me. And when we got through the piece, I understood what my place was in the piece, because I actually became like a mentor to the piece, inside of the piece, to the cast. I actually became the role of Mufasa in a way in the room. And that was very, very interesting. The show is beautiful. The language is beautiful. What I feel.
How do you not talk about Africa in that experience, when the language, the culture, the mother, I mean, like that, how do you not talk about that?
Now, Label did, who was from Africa.
Right.
But it depends on what you see and what you want. And we were puppets, and the puppets were telling the story, but it's all about who's under those puppets, and how do you pour into their lives, and how are they important to the story and important to you. And if they're not important to you, then it's just a piece of work. And I'm not talking about everybody. I'm really not at all.
Yeah.
That's not the case. But I'm just talking about, it's so important. No matter what we do, you have to see who you're talking about and see who you're working with.
100%. Yeah, and I mean, and at the end of the day too, it's sad to hear that it was about the puppets because it's such a human story. That's why it's so beautiful and relatable. It's a human experience, even though it's being told through, you know, these animals or what have you.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah,
And,
that's,
and the directors, the resident directors were great. You know, they really were, and trying to shape everything and making sure that I was okay.
okay. Well, that's good. So then going to The Color Purple, you get to do that with Fantasia, and you play Mr. in the show. And now I know there's been so many obviously very important conversations happening right now over the last month, and that will continue. And you know, I've heard so many different opinions. I thought last week actually the role of Mr. got brought up on a show that we're helping with the receipts, and they were like, without him, there's no Seeley. Without, you know what I mean? Like, you need that piece of the puzzle. What was that like? I know that you've played so many different types of characters as you know, we all get to do as actors, but like, you've played some really delicious people. And I would think that playing a role like that, what was it like in diving into a part like that, and yeah, your relationship with it?
Sure. When I saw the movie, and at the time I was doing Joseph on tour, and I would come home, my wife, we would always watch The Color Purple. And I said, when that's a musical, I'm playing Mr.
Wow.
And I said that because I knew those people. I knew that man. I knew exactly what was going on, and I knew the relationships, and I knew why they were where they were. And I knew that because I grew up with it. My mom said, you ain't doing nothing but playing your father, you know? So I knew who that man was. And when I was, of course, you read the book, because the book was great. You find out all the information in the book. And then you find out the historical line of what's happening in the world. Then you go through the historical line of your people and find out what's happening with them and what's happening with the man at the time. Then I went to my father and I began to talk to him to find about his life. I began to ask, when do you plant? When do you harvest? Why? All of those rich things that enrich, that you may not do on stage, but they enrich the character and your wealth to pull from for your landing in the piece. And so then when I was able to actually work on the piece and do the role, it was very important to me that he was redeemed at the end. Because if there's no redemption, what am I left with?
Right.
What am I saying? Am I saying this man is evil? Not at all. Because I believe this man wanted love. He wanted to be loved. He wanted to love Nettie deeply. And he did not get her. And so therefore,
go ahead.
And so when he saw Seeley, in my mind and in my interpretation, when he saw Seeley, it was a reminder of the love that he would never have in his life.
See, and that's exactly like that's why I think I love when, whatever you're playing, I love it. But specifically when you're playing a hated role, Jim Conley, you know, when you play a villain, it is so important that you go into it with exactly as you do when you're approaching it. They are a human and Absolutely. They believe what they are doing is right. You know Absolutely. What I mean? And that's like, whether it is completely wrong, they believe it is right. And you always do. I love that you always find the human in everything that you play, and even in the inhuman acts that someone can do. You know what I mean? Yes. And what would drive that person, and coming at Mr. from a place of seeking love, you know, is exactly right. And it's so wrong, you know what I mean, all at the same time. But it's like, that's exactly right.
Because no one hates for no reason. No one brutalizes someone, I would like to think, for no reason. There's always something underneath that has happened in their life that got them there.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so important for us as artists of storytellers to determine what is that thing that got them there to make them have that action. Because if you skip that beat, then you're just doing something on the surface.
Yes. There's so much. We've been given this gift of pause right now to reflect on our world, on ourselves, on each other, on our relationships, on everything. And I believe that those of us that are really actively seeking those things and those answers will come out of this pandemic whenever we get to as better artists, better people, better humans, because we have this gift of time to reflect on exactly that. So
Absolutely.
I think, yeah, that's very powerful and important. So moving into then, so we had worked together, and then you were like, I get this, I think it was a phone call, I think, and you're like, could I assist you on Into the Woods? And I think I dropped my phone. I was like, what? It's like, you want to what? And Leslie was our choreographer on that. And we got to be a team together along with Julie Lamoureux. And that was such an incredible experience. I was again so humbled because, you know, to think that you thought you could, you know, somehow learn anything from, you know, me at all. It was to me, I was always learning from you, and so it was just an incredible experience to work with you on that. And then I got to then, you know, go fly, you know, fly go and direct this massive production of Tarzan.
Yeah,
So we had like 2 weeks of tech on, like, and any regional company that's not like South Coast Repertory or Center Theater Group has 2 weeks of tech. It was insane. But you, like, talk about a way to get to you know, trial by fire, dive into a shallow end. Like, it was just insane, and you killed it, conquered it. Heard from Disney, it was like everything that it should have been on Broadway. It was a stunning production of that show.
It was terrifying.
I was just gonna ask you, but that, like, because then it's now launched though. I mean, like that, you know, you had also done The Wiz previously to that at a theater in Alabama that you have a relationship with, but that was kind of like your first really big, massive undertaking.
Yeah.
And you now have since gone back to school and gotten your degree and are now teaching at a university. And imparting your incredible knowledge onto the next generation coming up. So what has it been like? I mean, obviously you're not done performing. I mean, you'll still, I'm sure, perform as projects speak to you, but what has that been like transitioning for you? And do you find, you know, have you found like an equal or different love for it? Do you miss performing when you're directing? Like, tell me about that.
I absolutely love directing. When I look back at Tarzan, there's so much I've learned, because if I did that again, the main thing about Tarzan that bothers me today are the transitions.
Yeah.
You know, and now I know how to fix them.
I thought they were great.
No, now I know how to fix those transitions. I can do those transitions.
When we revive it, let's do it. Yeah.
Okay. But when I went to school for directing, it was all directing all plays. And I was directing Shakespeare and directing the Greek plays and all of that, which was a whole different thing, but not.
It's the foundation, yeah, right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So therefore, in directing that, I learned so much, not only about the transitions, but how to get to the next thought and all of those intricate things that you learn, you know, shaping the stage and all of that. But what I love about, like, I did Lysistrata, and I did it with 400 BC in the time period, but I also took all of the music that you would use harp music for, or the lyre, and I used it with hip hop beats. So I created rituals, and I used it also with hip hop beats as well. So I used hip hop dancing inside of it, keeping the text the same, you know,
That's
which kind of updated the show, which was wonderful. I wrote to the writer to make sure we could do this, and it was all good. So now I love sitting, like I just began to direct A Grand Night for Singing.
Oh yeah.
In Syracuse, and I put it in 4 different eras: the 20s, the 70s, the 20s, the 40s, the 70s, and present day.
Oh,
And the
cool.
set and the costumes shift over those periods as well, you know, and the music as well. So
cool.
It's great to now be able to just sit with a piece and sit with the text and allow everything to come from me that way.
Yeah.
You know, because now I understand all of that and I can envision everything and direct it that way, opposed to being terrified in other ways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, after Tarzan, nothing's gonna scare you, right?
You ain't lying. You ain't lying. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh, that was just, I mean, dealing with then, like, you get a problematic show that like bombs on Broadway, you get like, you know, and then it comes with not just that, but it's like, and you have to fly 100 people at the same time, and you have to like turn people into insects, and you have to, you know, whatever. It's just like, it was bananas, and you and the team just killed it. We were blessed to then have you back to direct Once on This Island, and I wanted to ask you about that because it had to be such a full circle moment for you revisiting that show from the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to touch on the fact that, like, you know, I think it's important. I was on there was a panel that is actually where I met, not to name drop, but Billy Porter, and he was on a panel talking about, it was a diversity and inclusion panel years ago, long before obviously this conversation that's happening right now. And he was like, you know, I want to be hired to direct Oklahoma, not just Once on This Island, you know what I mean? And that there's obviously that part of it, but when you were a part of the company, you were directed and choreographed by an incredibly gifted, brilliantly talented woman, Graciela Danielle, who's a legend, obviously, from her work on Ragtime and just a million and one other things, and still is doing things. You know, what was that like? Was it talked about at that time that there was not a Black creative on the team about a show that's entirely of, you know, for Black? It's different than Ragtime, where there's like obviously it's about 3 different cultures colliding, right? But with that, it's clearly about one culture. Was that ever discussed when as a company or on the side, that you didn't have that kind of leadership on that end? Or was that just because it was common even now, that it was not thought about? And then what was it like then getting to do that later with a Black choreographer, a Black director, you know, the company? What was that experience like?
When I went into the show, those conversations were already had, because I'm sure Keisha Lewis had those kinds of conversations from what I heard as well. And the one thing that I also know is, and I always state, is that show was created by them. That's what they had created. If I create something else for myself, that's different.
And you say they, meaning the original cast?
The original creators.
Creatives.
They created that piece.
Yeah.
Just like for Bringing the Noise, Bringing the Funk. It's an all-Black team because George Wolf is at the head of that.
Right.
He picks the team.
Right.
You know, and I remember even when I did Romance and Hard Times, Lily and I had just got to New York, her statements were, how can we not even have anybody in the orchestra of color?
Wow.
You're going to tell me in New York, you can't find not one person of color, even in the orchestra?
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know, and it goes back to because they're not looking for them. That's the bottom line. And when we get to today, do I want you to look for somebody just to look for them? No, that doesn't solve anything. Ask yourself the question, why wasn't I looking in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
What is that about? Because that's the question.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why is it not important to see people and to see talent, you know, or why are certain talents excluded? You know, who's in charge? And that's what it all boils down to. If there's nobody who looks like me on the panel of who makes decisions, then the voice is never heard. Then the thought never comes up. And that's the question, and that's where things have to change.
Amen. Yeah,
So,
okay, keep going.
and during the show, you asked me another question.
Just in kind of relating, you know, the two experiences,
yeah,
essentially.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So when I came to direct the show, I had a wealth of knowledge because I had done the show. But also I went back and read the book again, My Love, My Love, because there was so much information in that book that I wanted to bring to life, that I was able to do, from the butterflies, you know, to the rituals, you know, the candles and all of that, and bringing life to all of that. And what was interesting, I did see the latest production on tour, and the moment where I wanted to create what happened at the ball, he took it to the next level. But it's exactly what I saw in terms of what would happen with how the people who were now the rich people, the Bozons, how they were mixed in with the peasants, and then they all began to dance together because they knew what that world was, and they all went back to the same place. And he was able to capture that moment, and it was beautiful.
I am so sad I didn't get to see. I was planning on seeing it, and then this happened. So So I heard it was a stunning production.
Yeah. And he went back to the book. He went back to the text.
Yeah.
You know, and it's all about the story.
Yeah. And your production was stunning. You are such a talented director, and the way you approach your work is truly beautiful. My question, like, for us, like, we look for like, for creatives, you know, specifically, like, we look for it, and there seems to be maybe just out here in LA, and I could be wrong, a lack of people going into leadership positions, probably because they are not given those opportunities, or don't see themselves enough behind the table, so they don't think that those opportunities are for them, or, you know, like, trying to find someone who's like a Black stage manager, or any, you know, by POC, you know, all these different positions, and it's crazy to think. I mean, obviously there are people that, like you said, that don't look, and asking themselves that question is exactly what needs to be happening. But then, like, when you do start trying to look, it's like, how do we then now try to empower people to want to take leadership roles, you know what I mean, and try to navigate those waters.
And also, it goes to, I remember when I approached Disney because I wanted to be on a think tank, you know, and they said there's nothing like that exists, you know. But I know there would have been a space for me there that could have been very helpful for everything. I know that, but yet that was denied for whatever reason, you know. And it's when we go back to Once Upon a Time for a moment. Also, when you're doing a show with people of color, not only do we see them and recognize them, but there's something that we discovered, because I know there was something that you weren't hearing from the cast for a moment, and we discovered it was because of the sound. It's because of how the sound is mixed. Yes, but if we don't discover that and investigate that, then we think that they're doing something wrong that they're not doing.
Right.
You know, and how many people, but if you don't have a person of color on the team,
right,
to say, perhaps it's this, let's look at this,
right,
how do you know?
Right.
Because the voices are not the same, and they're not mixed the same.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, so I know that there are people who are on here. I know I see specifically a friend of mine, Brooke Ashton, who is has been directing a lot lately. Like, do you have advice for people that are making that leap and transition and want to go maybe from directing like at a community theater level and advancing themselves into the next level. Do you have any, words of wisdom?
Sure. I would say connect with somebody you trust and who trusts you and who will give you an opportunity. And also do the work, because we're not allowed to fail. And you have to know what you're doing. And therefore, the way to know what you're doing as a director is it depends on what your experiences are. If you're coming from the acting world, you go through that entire script and do it as an actor for everybody. But you have to understand, look at the piece, where do you want it to be and why? You know, what is the world that you see? What is the story? What is the message that everybody in that piece carry from beginning to end? You know, all of those details, moment to moment to moment to moment, go through the script so you know exactly what it is initially. If you are past that point, just go through and make sure you're very clear to answer questions. And it's okay not to know the answer, but you have to find out what the answer is. And ask questions. Ask questions. Find yourself in a place where someone will work with you and ask questions and research and tear it apart.
I 100% echo those statements, but I want to go back to something you said initially and find someone that you trust and that believes in you or trusts you. Developing relationships is like everything. It is so key, because you and I had that relationship. You and we had trust. And it was such a easy conversation and transition, and you going like, I'd love to direct. And I was like, you should direct, you know? And it's like, yeah, we should do that. So I think I had a different experience with another person, incredibly talented director and creative and actor. And he was like, how come you've never asked me to direct? And I was like, you run another theater company. Like, I would never think that you would have, I hardly have time to eat lunch, let alone go do something at another theater company. So sometimes, like, we ourselves, like as creatives in charge of organizations, do wrongfully so. And I think right now we're looking at how to look up and get our heads out of the sand, because we get so buried in the current fire that we're trying to put out, or thinking 3 years ahead, that we don't do enough of the work on our own. But like you said earlier, you had when you were talking about Parade, you had to do the work for yourself, right? Absolutely. And I think that you can't always wait for someone to ask you. You have to go and take the bull by the horns and ask. Absolutely. Because I know for me, like when someone is like, I have one person on this call, Nikki, who is like, hey, I want to work with you. I'd love to get in behind the table. And she's done that several times, just simply by asking, because it's like, I am all about it. I want to create. My 3D was all about, I kept getting told no. I kept getting told, you know, you're too young. You couldn't possibly know what you're doing. You know, you were in you've been in my shows. I gave you your first equity show, whatever the case may be. You know, and always thought of as the kid, and I had to create it to create my own opportunity. But I wanted to make sure that while we had names or whatever that were brought in, that it was also a place where it was going to give people who were also told no the opportunity to do something. So I am all about like, ask me, and I'm going to do better about reaching out and asking others as well. So I think that what you said is exactly right on, and just developing those relationships and asking those questions, because you'll be surprised how many people say yes, you know?
Exactly. And I think it's important to also, in building relationships, to always communicate, you know, because even we have gone down some roads that have been hard discussions, you know?
Yeah.
But it's important to have those discussions to get to the other side, you know, as well. It really, really is. And to know you can get to the other side. Because if you can't get to the other side, then you can't exist.
Yep, exactly. And that's what you and I have had those moments too, where we're like, let's go to my office and have this moment. And but we always come out the other end, you know, the other end. And that's really the, you know, a beautiful part of of a creative relationship, is that you do need people that challenge you and make you look at things differently and open up your mind to different things. So yeah, it's I've loved being a very small part of this part of your journey in life, and it's just seeing like the beautiful art you're creating and will continue to create, and now imparting your knowledge onto this next generation that's going to be so important. And yeah, so just thank you for what you're doing and always do for the community. What are there any questions in the room before we let this amazing man be for the day? Does anyone have any thoughts or questions? Colden, Auntie Colden, as my kids call him.
I first wanted to say, Rufus, I'm a great admirer of your work. I've seen you in Parade and Sister Act, and you're just an incredible actor. I was just wondering if you had, whether it was good or bad or not, if you had any special memories, or what was it like working with Hal Prince and Brett Carver and Carly Carmello during Parade?
Brent was amazing, just freaking amazing. Wonderful, giving man. Carol Lee as well. Hal was a genius. I remember sitting in rehearsal one day, and he was sitting at the table, and he was talking about, okay, now they're going. I'm like, what is this man talking about? So they're moving. Okay, a little faster, faster, faster. No, slow down, slow down. And there was nothing there. And I'm like, what in the world is he doing? I said, do I need to get out of here? Because he looked like he was crazy. But then when we got to the show and we were in tech, he was seeing the fans that was going on in the ceiling. And he was seeing how they would move during the moments in the show. And this was in a rehearsal, it wasn't a tech rehearsal, it was just a plain old rehearsal. And I'm like, my God, that man is freaking amazing. And that little moment taught me as a director, see everything. See it so you can communicate it. See it so you'll know what it is and what you want. Always know what you want and why. We don't dictate someone else's artistry, but we let them know what we see and feel and why. I
love that answer so very much, because it could not be more true and to the point. And that's exactly, he's a very visual director, and so that makes a lot of sense that he was seeing the fans. That is amazing.
Yes.
Awesome question, Colden. That brought up such a beautiful point, especially for any of our aspiring creatives out there. Anyone else have a question for this incredible man? Anyone? Oh yeah, Schneep.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say hi, Rufus. I miss you.
I miss you. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good.
I was just telling Christy, who's on here earlier, that like it was so cool that I got to like work with you in a classroom at Fullerton. Like
I loved it.
Like every week, it was like my like the best part of my day.
Oh, thank you.
And I miss you so much.
I know. How's everything over there?
We survived. It was a bit crazy, but you know, we're all doing.
Yeah, I see William Lett's on here too. I'm sure he's waving through his name that's typed out. But it's oh wait, I have a hand up. Leslie Stevens, so proper with your hand up. Oh, sorry, unmute yourself.
There we go. I just learned the hand up feature, so I wanted to like
use it. Why not?
I just, you know, I don't know if it's really as much a question, but right as the lockdown was happening in March, I was in rehearsals for the first time as a director, choreographer at a college where I teach. And TJ and I have talked about this often about I was not looking to direct or something because of certain areas that I didn't see. Like I see relationships, I see story, I see movement, and I would say I don't see furniture.
Yeah.
I don't see lights. Like, I mean, I can see if they're on, but I mean, I don't, you know, I feel inarticulate and insensitive in those areas. So it made me feel like, well, that must not be my area to contribute in. And usually the answer was, have a lighting designer or just learn it, you know? So I realized that's a piece of it. In the first opportunity, it doesn't mean it would be the only one, but a college has very specific demands and limitations and personalities. And I guess that's always the case. But in a way, I was it was interrupted. So I didn't have to see the full demonstration of the areas I was lacking in, because it didn't go to fruition. But even though the cake didn't get baked, I have a suspicion of the areas of cake that might not have, you know, popped up so nicely.
Not as risen as much, yeah.
And but I guess the thing I can take away without harping on the individual obstacles of, you know, the logistics of that situation was my own leadership preparedness to weather all the whatever problem. Nobody will help me with the furniture. This won't happen. The room isn't open. The lights aren't on. Like whatever things that are in the way. But regardless, the leadership then comes to me to set the tone or to help everybody understand how we get back on the story, on the raft that holds the story together, or how we stay in a space and hold the energy even if you're not working, or and just dictating the rules is not it. So I mean, like it's a personal growth lesson. What I came away with is I would need to do more, I don't know what to call it, like spiritual sit-ups or something, so I can be much more articulate. It's with what I say, but it's also not with what I say. It's energetically with how you hold the room. And I don't know if you have if that's a conscious thing or an instinctual thing that you...
Knowing your spirit and who you are, I'm going to say to move away from the academic side of your mind and go to your heart, because the lights are from your heart. The lights are what you want them to feel and how you want it to feel in the room. What does the lighting say about the moment in terms of how it feels? That's all you have to tell a lighting designer. How you want it to feel. Is it cold? Is it warm? Is it a single person? You know, and when you think about it that way, you don't have to think about lighting it, although you will be, because the lighting designer just needs to know how you want it to feel, more so than how you want it to look, but it's all about how you want it to feel. Yes? And when it comes to the furniture, that is a partnering with the set designer.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it by yourself, you know? And basically it's you look at it and figure out who's moving where and why. Why is it there? You know, and play. If you need to get some little diagrams around or play and put X's on paper, play. Get it out of your head. Because if it's in your head, you're going to get stuck and you're going to get trapped and you're going to feel inadequate. And you are not that in any capacity.
No, ma'am, you are not.
Playland.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I mean, and I guess that's the other side of having it not go to fruition all the way. Like we were like a week before tech. So like part of that, I guess part of the education to me also didn't get finished, but I'm grateful. I will tell you that though I got a bug in my shorts that so helped me. I wanted a Kit Kat girl on a unicycle. I wanted her to be at the end of the play, not being able to go back and forward. Like, I don't know what it means, but I was like, there is a unicycle and it is in the story and I don't know how. But anyway, so there's for irrational thought. There was some deeper thing captured in it. And of course, this girl came in and her special skill was riding a unicycle. So it was brought
like, it's in the show.
Tumbleweed, go. Okay.
Trust yourself and ask questions.
Yeah.
You have TJ, I'm having a problem with this. I don't understand why I'm not seeing this. And he will tell you why. You don't have to do it alone.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was amazing. Bravo, you guys. A huge virtual round of applause for this incredible man. I am so excited that we got to have this conversation. We hope that he'll be able to, look at everybody so fancy now with their like clapping emoji hands. I love that. I love it. I'm still learning the Zoom. But anyway, we're hoping that he will have time to come back before he has to go back to school, but he's going to be headed back in August to be teaching and in Syracuse. So we wish you well. We wish you safety. Yes.
also the one thing in the academic world for me, I love it. I absolutely love it because my thing is about everybody finding their voice in terms of who they are. And that's my thing in terms of making sure that we create artists who can go into the world and be confident with who they are and their art to say what they want to say in the world in terms of why they are here.
Yes.
Because we can all go 5, 6, 7, 8, sing a song and do great, but who are you? You know, and whenever, and also for the young lady or man, somebody who wants to be a director.
Oh yeah, Brooke. Yeah,
So,
she's over there.
whenever you begin to use people of color, I don't know if you're African American, I don't know who you are, Brooke. Where are you?
She is. She is African American. She's down there. She's waving. She's in her car.
Great, I see you now.
Hi, Rufus. We actually met at Cal State Fullerton one time. I was coming in as a guest singer on a event, Concert Under the Stars. So
Where are you?
we
Yes. Okay. Cool.
And I'm
Cool.
African American, and I've been directing community theater all around Orange County for the last couple months, and I've been thinking about going to get my master's.
Do it. Do
She's
it.
amazing. She is
Do it.
amazing. She's
Do
so freaking talented. And we have, Brooke, we'll talk sidebar about some next steps. But yeah, she's amazing. But anyway,
Thank
you
you.
were saying, Rufus, you wanted to say.
I think and give Brooke my information.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. I'll text you. I'll get you guys in touch. Yeah.
And I was also going to say that whenever we use people of color, people of any nationality that you use in your piece, no matter what it is, as directors, we must have a point of view of why we chose them and who they are in the piece and in the telling of that story. Because they are not necessarily what was written, but they're added to what was written.
Mm-hmm.
Because we see who they are, and that just makes the piece richer.
100%. And that's, you would say, color conscious casting and not colorblind casting.
There's no such thing as colorblind. I'm a black man.
Exactly
Black
right.
man when I walk in the room.
I hate that expression because
There's no such thing.
There's no such thing. Exactly right. It's
no.
a term that has been created and used inappropriately. But yeah, that is extremely valuable and wonderful advice. So
thank you for asking me, TJ. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, you guys, Rufus Bonds Jr. Yeah, you're amazing. I hope that again, we wish you well and all the safety and all of the amazing things. We're going to be doing some panels on education and on kind of the problems that lie within, especially theater programs in education, and some important conversations. So if you're available, I'd love you to come back and participate. But we also understand you got a lot of planning to do for your curriculum and spend time with your beautiful family while you got them. So we love you. And again, you guys, thank you so much for joining us today. We love you all. And again, Rufus, from the bottom of my heart, I love you. Thank you. And we'll talk very soon.
Thank you, Rufus. Love you.
Bye, Brittany. Bye, Christy. Bye,
everybody.
Jenny.
Hey, Leslie. I miss you.
Bye, Becky. I love you, Leslie.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
Teresa.